So before we can dive into coding, we do have to make sure that Python 3 is installed on your system. Remember, Python is an interpreted programming language, so you are going to write out your code in text, and then the interpreter will read that code and turn it into the actual program. So on your Mac, you're going to have to see if Python 3 is actually installed. So the command to do that is Python 3 space hyphen hyphen version for the version. We're going to hit enter, and we can see on my system Python 3.13.1. So that is the current version as the beginning of 2025 when I'm filming this particular session. If you get a Python version here and it is anything 3.9 or later, you should be fine. You don't really have to worry about upgrading. Everything that we're going to do in the series will work well for you. Once you start going further into the world of Python and you start using frameworks, again, things like OpenCV or Django or any of those types of things, you may run into issues where they will require a minimum version of Python 3. So at that point, you may be forced to upgrade. So if you get any kind of response here, you should be fine. You're not going to have to install Python. The other thing just to take a look at here is pip. So we're going to talk about pip later in some sessions about modules, but there's this thing called pip3. It's the package installer program for Python. And basically we want to make sure what version that is to, make sure it's actually installed. So if we do pip3 space hyphen hyphen version, we should get a version here of whatever version it is. This frankly has never come up. It's never been a problem for me on that particular version. The main thing that you want to see is that it is actually installed. If you do not get a response for Python or you don't get a response for pip3, you should go through and rerun the Python installer, and we'll talk about that in a second. So if you need to install Python or pip onto your Mac operating system, there's 3 different ways of doing it. This is one of the few times when I actually think Mac OS is the worst operating system. It's simply trying to install Python is weirdly weird when it comes to Mac OS. Even on Windows, it's a little bit easier. But anyways, the main way that you should probably install Python onto your system is to simply go to the python.org website, download the installer, basically run the installer, go all the way through the process, and that should be fine for you. When you get to the end of it, reboot your system, and again, do the versions for both Python 3 and pip3. You should get your versions and go on your merry way. There is also something called Homebrew. So Homebrew is actually a framework that's been created for Mac. It's something you have to install additionally, and it allows you to install like Linux type tools onto your Mac OS. So a lot of the Linux tools out there that you might want to use, you would actually use Homebrew to run those. If you're using Homebrew, there's a command called brew install Python 3, and that should install Python 3 for you. Hopefully, if that's the way you go. That might be a little bit more advanced. Again, just download most likely from python.org. There is also another way to be able to install Python 3, and that is with Xcode. So there's Xcode command line tools. If you install that, when you install it, it will actually give you Python 3.9. And so that will be a version of Python for you, but it'll obviously be older than even what I'm talking about now. So unless you need to do Xcode, that's probably also not the best bet. So really at the end of the day, there's 3 ways to do it. Downloading and running from python.org is probably the best option. So all you have to do is come to python.org, you look for downloads here, you hover over it, and it should detect what your operating system is. Download for Mac OS, Python 3.13.1. We can also go here to the all releases, and this will show you all the different releases of Python that are out there, but generally there's no reason to mess around with that. Just download the current version and you should be fine. All you do is you download it, you run the installer. All of the custom options are set properly. You don't have to tweak anything with the custom options. Get all the way through the end of the installation process. Do make sure that you reboot your system, and at that point, Python and pip should be installed properly. I will warn you with this that there is in fact a warning. This is going to be like one of the only times of this entire series of classes. We've got like 50 sessions here. This is going to be one of the only times when you might actually have to do some real technical troubleshooting, right? Again, the Python interpreter is an app that gets installed onto your machine. So lordy, 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 right? If there's problems with permissions or security settings or antivirus software or previous configurations or who the hell knows what, quirkiness can follow, and you might have to do a little bit of troubleshooting. It shouldn't be that hard, it shouldn't be that big a deal, but I'm sitting on this side of the camera, so I can't really tell you what issues you might run into. So I'm just warning you, this might end up being a bit of a process. Hopefully it's not. Hopefully you just go on, you do the version, it gives you the version, you go. If not, you install from python.org and you go. But again, if that's how things worked in the technology world, I wouldn't have a job. That's just the fact of the matter. So there might be some troubleshooting. Yep, welcome to the world of technology.